All right, our reading for today is Numbers 33. This is going to be kind of a historical memory of what's happened over these 40 years since the Israelites were delivered from slavery in Egypt, wandered in the desert for 40 years, and prepared to enter the promised land of Canaan. So Numbers 33 says, "These are the journeys of the children of Israel, who went out of the land of Egypt by their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. Now Moses wrote down the starting points of their journeys at the command of the Lord. And these are their journeys according to their starting points. They departed from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the day after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with boldness in the sight of all the Egyptians." That gets us through verse 3. I want to go back and comment on something in verse 2. It says in verse 2, "Now Moses wrote down." So it's interesting that God had Moses keep a written record of this throughout the years. And from that, this chapter was written. So that reminds us, why would he do that? Why would he had Moses do that? Why do we have this chapter? And in our lives, we can learn from that. It's so that we remember what's happened in our life. We can look back and learn from what God has done. So I have a grandmother that keeps diaries. She's 96 right now. And she goes back and reads those all the time. And I've never been good about journaling or writing down notes. Mine is more through photographs and, things of that nature. But it's good for us to remember the times in our lives where we struggled and where God has done things, and to remember that. For the Egyptians, in verse 4, were burying all their firstborn, whom the Lord had killed among them, also on their gods. The Lord had executed judgment. So he's back to when they were in Egypt and they were departing to the Red Sea crossing. Then the children of Israel moved from Ramesses and camped at Succoth. They departed from Succoth and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They moved from Etham and turned back to Pi Hahiroth, which is east of Baal Zephon, and they camped near Migdal. Now, all these names don't mean anything to us right now, but at the time that he wrote this, they would have all been familiar with the geography and where all these locations are. They departed from before Hahiroth and passed through the midst of the sea into the wilderness, went 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham and camped at Marah. They moved from Marah and came to Elim. At Elim were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, so they camped there. I love that story when he tells it. I think it's in Exodus 15, but I'm not positive. I'd have to go back and look. They moved from Elim and camped by the Red Sea. They moved from the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They journeyed from the wilderness of Sin and camped at Dophkah. They departed from Dophkah and camped at Alush. They moved from Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They departed from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They moved from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Hattaavah. They departed from Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazeroth. They departed from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They departed from Rithmah and camped at Ramon Perez. They departed from Ramon Perez and camped at Libnah. They moved from Libnah and camped at Rasah. They journeyed from Rasah and camped at Kehelathah. You can see why I wrote this down. There's no way they would have been able to remember all this. They went from Kehelathah and camped at Mount Shepher. They moved from Mount Shepher and camped at Haradah. They moved from Haradah and camped at Machaloth. They moved from Machaloth and camped at Tahath. They departed from Tahath and camped at Terah. They moved from Terah and camped at Mithkah. They went from Mithkah and camped at Hashmonah. They departed from Hashmonah and camped at Moseroth. They departed from Moseroth and camped at Ben-Jacan. They moved from Ben-Jacon and camped at Hor-Haggidgad. They went from Hor-Haggidgad and camped at Jotbatha. They moved from Jotbatha and camped at Abrona. They departed from Abrona and camped at Ezion-Geber. They moved from Ezion-Geber and camped in the wilderness of Zin, which is Kadesh. They moved from Kadesh and camped at Mount Or on the boundary of the land of Edom. Then Aaron the priest went up to Mount Or at the command of the Lord and died there in the 40th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt. On the first day of the 5th month, Aaron was 123 years old when he died on Mount Or. Now the king of Arad, the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the children of Israel. So they departed from Mount Or and camped at Zalmonah. They departed from Zalmonah and camped at Punon. They departed from Punon and camped at Abath. They departed from Abath and camped at Ij-Abarim, at the border of Moab. They departed from Ajim and camped at Dibon-Gad. They moved from Dibon-Gad and camped at Almon-Diblathaim. They moved from Almon-Diblathaim and camped in the mountains of Abiram before Nebo. They departed from the mountains of Abiram and camped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho. They camped by the Jordan from Beth Jezamoth as far as the Abel Acacia Grove in the plains of Moab. Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan across from Jericho, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, When you have crossed the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, destroy all their engraved stones, destroy all their molded images, and demolish all their high places. You shall dispossess the inhabitants of the land and dwell in it, for I have given you the land to possess. And you shall divide the land by lot as an inheritance among your families. To the larger you shall give a larger inheritance, and to the smaller you shall give a smaller inheritance. There everyone's inheritance shall be whatever falls to him by lot. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then it shall be that those whom you let remain shall be irritants in your eyes and thorns in your sides, and they shall harass you in the land where you dwell. Moreover, it shall be that I will do to you as I thought to do to them. So that ends chapter 33. I mentioned that story about Elam and Mara, and I thought it was in Exodus 15. I just want to check that real quick for you. It's a great story. Yes, Exodus 15. You have to go a ways, but starting in Exodus 15:22 is that story. So you might want to read those few verses. It's very encouraging.